So we have Chris Erwin from Big Frame, and we have Joanne Waage. Is that?
Voga, Norwegian. Don't worry about it.
Norwegian. I should have known that.
Should have known.
Damn. From Viki, two really interesting companies. So I want to start by asking each of them, how do you make your money? So Chris, why don't you start?
I'm going to segue into that, but I always just like to gauge the room quickly before I kick off the conversation. So I just want to see a quick raise of hands. How many people in here are from what they call, the digital entertainment industry? Raise of hands. Okay, I see a few. All right. Next, how many people in here are from traditional entertainment? Raise of hands. Interesting. Okay. So just curious. So the question is, where's our money come from at Big Frame? Well, quick introduction to myself is I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Big Frame. We are Hollywood's first management company to really prioritize working with digitally native creators. So essentially, we are the quarterback to their career. We understand where they are now, where they want to go, and we help them get there through our buyer relationships, through our strategic advisory. And what's unique about us is that we don't look at digital as a category, but instead as a currency in which to transact in all categories. So that's just quick context. And where does our money come from? Well, Big Frame was founded around 5 years ago. And the original founder was working at Current TV, which was both a kind of a linear TV network and digital network as well. And she started to work with a few digital creators like Dave Days and a handful of others. And they were looking for basic advisory. They were reaching out to her saying, hey, brands are starting to reach out to us. We're creating videos online. We don't know how to structure deals. We're looking to program our channels. Do we program them like a TV network or differently? And we want to grow our audience. How do we do that? And these creators were completely lost. So one of our co-founders, Sarah Penna, started working with them. And those three services were the bread and butter of what we did. And then from there, Big Frame was born. And we realized that these creators were this next generation of talent in Hollywood. And they needed advisory in all aspects of entertainment, whether it was TV, film, book publishing, content licensing, and a multitude of these emerging models. And so our business 5 years ago, where AdSense, which was the media spent on YouTube, was probably 99% of my P&L as a business, it started to evolve. And about 2 to 3 years later, in 2014, we started to see the brand deal market and branded content integrations really start to emerge, and that became around 50% of our revenue and margin mix. And then from there, as these businesses increasingly started to diversify, we were advising on a multitude of different Hollywood deals. And so content licensing really picked up, where YouTube was reaching out for first window opportunities, Vessel, and a bunch of emerging other platforms. And where we are today is that we're seeing our revenue pie, because I just actually gave my year-end presentation, really start to evolve, which is exciting, and I'm sure we're going to get into that in a second.
So how does that revenue pie break down? What are the slices in your pie?
The slices in my pie right now. So I would say that the way it breaks down currently, and I don't want to overly share anything proprietary, but probably around from branded content is around 50% of our revenue mix.
So just so everyone's on the same page and clear, what is branded content for you?
So think of basic product placement or an endorsement, where a creator is paid a fee to feature a beauty product in a video. An example would be from one of our creators like Ingrid Nielsen, who's doing a 10-minute video called Get Ready With Me in the mornings, and of the 15 products that she is showcasing in the video, whether it's toothpaste or skincare or shampoo, one of them is paid there by the brand to have placement in that video spot. So that comprises around 50% of our revenue pie. Then AdSense, which is the media spend that is placed there by Google, probably comprises another 5 to 10%. And then the rest is increasingly diversifying, probably from content licensing, it's around 20%. And then the other mix is starting to vary depending on the year, whether it's book publishing, paid appearance fees, and things of that nature.
Aren't we missing 25?
So that's the other gap. So it's 5 to 10 from AdSense, around 20% from the management opportunities, and then around 50% from branded content. And then that gap is all these other emerging content category or emerging entertainment categories that we're involving ourselves in.
Okay, I'll grill you on that in a second.
Thank you, Ben.
Joanne.
Oh, I'm nervous now. So let me start with what Viki is, because I think a lot of people don't know Viki. Viki is a streaming video service. We're much like Hulu, but we focus on international content, and our sweet spot is really Asian dramas. So we are one of the biggest providers of Asian dramas outside of Asia. Our fans, interestingly enough, are not all Asian. Our audience is less than 50% Asian, and the rest of them are made up of, everybody else in the world. So, it's not new to, I think, Koreans at the very least, that K-drama is very popular. It sort of rode on the heels of K-pop, which was also and it still is very popular, riding on the heels of J-pop. So Viki has captured that audience, and we continue to build the audience in very unique ways. What sets us apart really is our community, and those are the rabid fans who come to Viki not just to have a premium video experience, but to really interact with that content and interact with other people who are fans like them. In the United States, for example, where our fans aren't, predominantly Asian, it is a quirky thing to love Asian dramas. And when you fall in love with Asian dramas, want to know other people who are also falling in love with Asian dramas. You also get very deep into the stars and the makeup and the clothes and everything that sits around that. So Viki really, our goal is to deliver on every piece of our fans' desires and experience to connect both with each other and with the content. Money.
The money.
How do we make the money?
How do you make the money from all these rabid fans?
These
out there?
rabid fans. Well, it's interesting. So we did used to just be a purely AVOD model, and I think as we all know in this industry, it's very, very tough to monetize premium content just on AVOD. We had an SVOD service for several years that we never really did anything with. It was just ads free, and that was kind of the differentiator. At the beginning of this year, we decided to double down on SVOD. And really built a real programming strategy around our subscription service that involved marquee titles and exclusives. Very much saying come to Viki, obviously, if you want to see this content. And where we sit now, whereas obviously 90+% of our revenue was from advertising, we are now at 2/3 of our advertising revenue from advertising and 1/3 from SVOD, and around halfway through 2017, we would expect the SVOD revenue to exceed the AVOD revenue. The great thing as well is that we're not losing AVOD revenue while we're doing that. We have what we believe is an effective windowing strategy for content that isn't familiar to a marketplace. I believe you really need that. So Netflix or Hulu can just go up and put House of Cards, and people will come and watch it because there's enough of a swell around it and enough, people talking about it that they'll pay for the service to watch it. Whereas content like ours, where we have to actually introduce people to it and get them to fall in love with it, it is very important to allow people to sample that content first. So very bullish on the SVOD strategy, but more to come when we talk more about other future monetization strategies.
So yours is a case where freemium works, where
Yes.
allowing people to have the taste of the content and then getting them to pay, that's been successful.
Absolutely, and it's essential. Again, you cannot convert new people to a category, to content that is so different from what they currently know, from what is their culture, without allowing them to fall in love with it. And to fall in love with it, they're not going to fall in love with it if they have to make a decision to pay, $6 or whatever it is just to sample it.
So how many subscribers, Joanne?
We can't tell you. It's confidential. But let's just say, since we started, we had a small amount of subscribers, and we have increased that in 8 months. I think 7-fold. So, and that trajectory is strong. So yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So how many countries?
We're in every country outside of China.
Every
Yes.
country outside China.
Yes.
So Netflix is not the only global network.
No, absolutely not.
So
Yeah.
you're in at least 190, which is their number.
Yes. Absolutely. Anywhere
That's great.
outside of China. China is the only country that blocks us, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you just need a Chinese partner.
I know. Lots of opportunities.
So Chris, your pie chart, which was a very interesting one, how is that pie chart going to change going forward? So if we fast forward, comfortable with 5 years as a time frame? What will it look like in 5 years?
I wish I knew the answer to that. My business is bigger.
Aren't you paid to know the answer to that?
5 years in this space is a lifetime.
That's what
that's a really
I'm
good
paid
point.
to do that all the time.
I think I'm winning if
Just
I can
for us.
think 1 quarter ahead, and then I think I'm doing my job really well, or at least that's what I tell my boss. So yeah, it's amazing. I mean, look, as Joanne said, the space that I'm in has been evolving at a super rapid pace, and Big Frame 4 to 5 years ago was actually involved in around 4 different business lines. And I never would have thought that 4 years ago we would have really focused on talent representation, but that's where we really exceeded. And then, 2 years ago we partnered with Awesomeness TV, who's our parent media company, where they really focused on, we actually used to manage a variety of owned and operated content brands. So we had a massive shift in our business model and our revenue pie in just the past 4 to 5 years alone. And so forecasting where we're going to go 5 years from now is tough. If I were to predict, future casts as best as I can, I would say that 1, we're going to increasingly participate in more traditional Hollywood revenue streams. And this is where you're seeing as we're going to increasingly co-partner on productions and produce our own content alongside our creators in-house, that we're going to have more producerial fees that are going to feed our P&L. On top of that, I think what's really exciting for our company is that we're going to be able to build businesses alongside our creators. So if you look at just examples of what PewDiePie is doing with Maker Studios, where he's creating an entire talent and content network around him as an individual content creator, that's really, really exciting. And there's a lot of business model opportunities around that. And I think as we increasingly work with some of our star creators to help them build out their production companies, help them build out their different business model aspirations, that's going to be an increasing opportunity for us. So for example, as we start to observe this intersection of traditional and digital media, one of our top creators, Tyler Oakley, who has around 8 million subscribers on the YouTube platform, we just did a development deal with Ellen DeGeneres' team, where they have a partnership to create digital content and then also an intention to create content for linear networks as well. That's really, really exciting. That is a massive new benchmark for the space, and I expect that type of intersection between both traditional and digital to increasingly come together over the next few years.
So that talent management side is really interesting, because you've been fostering a whole raft of new talent, right, that's coming through. Where does that lead? Because you could conceivably become another creative artist agency. You could become a talent management powerhouse. You could move from representing just digital first talent to taking in traditional talent as well, merging the two. That's an option, right?
Very much so. Actually, one of our goals that we laid out for ourselves in 2016 was that we increasingly wanted to diversify our roster mix, and realizing that when Big Frame was founded about 4 to 5 years ago, the way that we selected talent was that they had to really pop. They had to have a special sauce. We weren't just looking for creators who were going to be just online content brands, whether on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, that when they were on stage during a tour, when they were on the silver screen, that something about them really popped, whether they had 5 million subscribers or they had 500 subscribers. And so we have increasingly focused on bringing more lit-focused talent in-house, because we want to have a diversity of our roster, where we have writers and directors and producers to partner with our digitally native talent is really exciting. And because we talk about these evolving business models, I think a lot of people think of talent as just, they are just actors or actresses and what they can do on the silver screen like Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie. I always say that the talent that we're working with today, they're the new verticalized media brand. Not only are they the acting talent, but they are also the distribution, they're the marketing, they are advising in a creative capacity, they're often financing their own IP, which is really, really exciting.
Interesting. So, Joanne, back to you. in terms of fast forward, look into the crystal ball for your business model mix. You've already given us a short-term flavor where 2/3 of your revenues will be subscription middle of next year, I think you said. Going further out, do you become, primarily an SVOD platform? How do you see that evolving?
No, I mean, I think that we are very different than other SVOD platforms. So, if you look at
How
Netflix,
so? Why?
Based on our fan base. So we have a highly engaged base of viewers who want to do much more than just watch the content. It's, many are doing a traditional lean back experience. They may lean back and watch their favorite show, at night, but when they're, at work or, on the plane or whatever it is, they will be engaging via their smaller devices and communicating with each other and watching more and more short-form content, which we've introduced into the mix, et cetera. So we actually see ourselves evolving much more deeply on that front, that the subscription and the long-form premium content is always going to be very core to our business. It's highly monetizable, as we all know. But, the difference between Viki, let's say, and Netflix, for example, if Netflix were to advertise to you in some way about, let's say, my favorite example now, I'll use House of Cards again, but okay, Claire's lipstick, right? Buy Claire's lipstick. I would imagine that most of us would be very put off by that. Our users want that. Our users want to know what is associated with the content and what more they can do with it, and that includes buying, that includes interacting with the stars, etc.
So you've actually got quite a lot in common with Chris here, right?
Very much.
In this model.
A very similar audience, actually. So we have a huge millennial and Gen Z audience, right? And they expect engagement well beyond a lean-back experience. Not always. I think that they're still watching Hulu in a very lean-back experience, and they're still watching Netflix. But for their passion verticals, like K-drama or C-drama, they want a different experience. So where you'll see us grow, at least we know these are the things that are planned, and then who knows in 5 years. You'll see us deepening our relationship with our consumers, both from providing them with additional types of content, including short form, including more Viki originals, because they identify with our brand and they will watch whatever we put out with our name on it. But as well, allowing them to do more content creation. So you will see us stepping into the space of having Viki creators. So much like, Awesomeness TV. That we will also see us doing more along the e-commerce realm, and many other things still yet to be determined.
The e-commerce angle is probably not a coincidence in that you're, I believe, now owned by a major e-commerce
That
group,
does help.
Right?
That does help. And Rakuten is investing in a lot of interesting technologies. So Rakuten is I'm not sure if you guys know this, but Rakuten is our parent company. They are basically the Amazon of Japan. And they have a massive portfolio of companies that range from finance to shopping to video and content. In the content group, which we reside, they have a research and development arm that spends a lot of time looking at ways to integrate new technologies into these services to better monetize. And one of those, definitely are the many ways that you can capture the e-commerce market. But again, I think it's very delicate. When you're selling someone a premium subscription service, it doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for Viki's audience.
I was just going to add, I think the interactivity note that Joanne is mentioning, it's very important to our creator set. One of the universal truths that we recognized a few years back was that fans are creators and creators are fans. Yeah. And these fans are really inspiring the content that their creators are creating because they can interact in the YouTube comments, they can tweet at them, they can DM them, and they're often inspiring the videos that these creators are publishing on a regular basis. And that's absolutely incredible. And that's very much kind of a lean forward experience. Now, and very relevant for Gen Z, does that mean that the lean back experience is going to go away? Definitely not. But I think that there is starting to be a blend of those models. We have a research arm at our parent company at Awesomeness. It's called Wildness. And they found that these this generation Z, probably like 12 to 22, they'll do these viewing parties. Well, they might be watching a Netflix or a Hulu or an Amazon program, or they'll buy a movie like Expelled from ATV Films on iTunes, and they'll all go to a friend's house, 15 of them all hanging out together, and they'll be watching the content. They'll be interacting with each other. They're sending Snapchats to each other, sending snaps to their friends that weren't able to make it. And so that's a really unique blend of this like lean back plus lean forward experience. But for a lot of the creators that we work with, that notion of interactivity is so foundational. And a lot of these creators are often considered almost like a big brother or a best friend or a big sister, because when you're watching personality-based content, it's like that person is talking right to you, whether it's on your phone or on your laptop after school. And there's a really, really distinct relationship there. And we see that manifest when we do different tours or meetups where a fan will come up to a creator as if they've known them their entire life. And so, hey Ingrid, or hey Tyler, how you doing? I love that video that you did last month, and I know that this is your favorite dog and that your dog was sick, and hopefully it's okay. And I've never seen anything like that before. And I think that type of relationship is going to drive a lot of different business models where you're talking about commerce, you're talking about content creation, you're talking about the ability to create these new media brands around these creators, and that gets us really excited.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, we go to KCON every year, and this year we brought some creators with us through our partnership with CJ Dia, and the lines to meet them were over 45 minutes long, and that's just hey, it's Faye who does makeup tutorials, and Honey Kiki who does cooking. So these people are the stars of the new generation, but what's different is exactly what you said, that they can touch these stars. They can communicate with them, unlike somebody on the big screen. So it's a very powerful way to communicate with your audience.
I was going to ask, in respect to that, I mean, it seems to me that this new generation of digital first talent that we're talking about, are perhaps what demarcates them in a sense is that they are much more responsive directly to their audience, their fans, and their creative output reflects that. In contrast to the sort of the Hollywood A-listers who are quite generally more aloof. They try and do their red carpet thing, but they're not necessarily responding directly in their performance. Is that fair?
So I want to properly answer this question. We're seeing a mix. Like if you look at the show Pretty Little Liars, all of the creators on that show have insanely rabid online social followings. So I don't think that this is like there's a world going forward where it's completely bifurcated, where you have your traditional Hollywood talent and then you have your digitally native creators. I think you're going to see this increasing intersection where a lot of our creator set is starting to be on primetime shows. They're appearing on Netflix series. Their movies are having theatrical releases, and you're seeing a lot of these traditional Hollywood talent that want to be able to bring their audience with them to different programs. And so they're building out their online followers, because if they're just a character on a TV show, what is their value to that TV network or to the studio if they leave? They want to be able to their prospective partners, bring their audiences that crave them, that crave their talent. And so we're starting to see this, this start to manifest itself in a few different exciting ways. But it's hard to say. I also do think that some will just stick to their craft, but I think that's just going to be less common going forward.
Yeah, so I was obviously just being far too simplistic.
We're here to just add context to what you're saying.
Yeah, that's great. So one of the things that struck me, Chris, was, in your, if I were wanting to work with a talent agency, I would want someone representing me who would be selling whatever I did to the maximum potential audience out there in terms of distribution partners, platforms, etc. I might see it as a conflict of interest if my talent agency was owned by a major media group, which yours is now. Is that a
Correct.
conflict of interest?
Our competitors like to claim it as a conflict of interest, so I'm very accustomed to that. So look,
Sorry to fall into the trap of
No,
what your competitors
I totally expect it. Get an exciting conversation going. So look, when we were sold to Awesomeness TV 2 years ago, it happened because of the following. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was at the time the founder and chairman of DreamWorks Animation, they had acquired Awesomeness TV a year earlier. And we realized that for Big Frame to go bigger, we really needed a big media partner. The dollars in the market at that time were small, and we really needed to find someone that understood the space, that wanted to invest in it in a material way. And Katzenberg saw this as the future. And so in partnering with Brian Robbins, the founder of Awesomeness, they decided they wanted to double down on their investment in digital media and digital content. And so they acquired Big Frame and put Big Frame and Awesomeness TV together. And it worked because Awesomeness has always had a talent-centric philosophy. Brian Robbins, who is the CEO and founder, I mean, he's a former child actor. He's the producer of Smallville and One Tree Hill. He's been programming to young audiences for nearly 30 years. And he always knew that it really takes talent to put audience in the seats. And so that talent-centric philosophy very much aligned with Big Frame's philosophy of it's all about the talent and it's talent first. And on top of that, Awesomeness was investing in content in this space in the most thoughtful and the biggest and most impactful way. And so that partnership for us has been really fantastic. And you see what Awesomeness Films has done with Expelled and Before I Fall. And they had, I think, the first announcement from the space where I think it's Before I Fall was sold to Open Road at Cannes, and it's going to have the first wide theatrical release in over 2,000 theaters, which is exemplary. And they're star makers. And so they feed talent to us, and we feed talent to them. It's been a great partnership. That being said, there is no obligation between both companies. We don't require them to cast our talent in any of their programming. Our talent have to be the best to make it. And we don't have a first look deal with them. We don't have to bring them any of our ideas or anything like that. We sit shoulder to shoulder, so things work together. But we work with all the other studios and all the other MCNs that are in space. So whether it's Maker, Full Screen, Kin Studios, we're totally agnostic. Our talent come first.
Okay. Joanne, you talked about increasingly moving into original, exclusive content. How important a part of the strategy is that going forward?
It's very important. Obviously, we're not alone. All of the big players are doing it. I think what's unique about Viki is that we're a small player and we are still able to do it. The importance of it is that it's a race to the bottom. If you're simply acquiring content, prices go up. Your competitors secure exclusives. You secure exclusives. The market's divided, and it's a very complicated situation. When you own the content, then you own the asset, and you can monetize it, and build your company as its own powerful asset, a la Netflix or Amazon. So for us, it's very important. It's also very important because we have an interesting audience because it is such a global audience, and it is a very globally minded audience that is looking to bridge cultures. So when we look at content creation, we look at it very specifically for Viki. So for example, our first original series was called Drama World. Drama World, we call it like a love letter to our fans because the scenario was around what we believe all of our fans really want, which is they really want to be in a K-drama and not just act in a K-drama, but like be in a K-drama. So the story revolves around this woman, Claire, who is a K-drama fan, and one day, through some incidents, finds herself falling into this world called Drama World, and what ensues in this scenario called Drama World. And what's interesting about it is it's done in English and Korean. So she, as part of Drama World, you can understand Korean. They can understand you when you're speaking English. So there's part subtitled in both. And it's very much, when you watch it, it very much plays with all of the K-drama themes, but with very much a Western sense of humor. And this our first foray into original production, we've won several awards. We won the Seoul Drama Awards. We won, there's a new web conference and series out of Marseille doing all, awarding web dramas. We won that, and
Congratulations!
Thank you. I urge you all to check it out. It's hilarious. It's very, very cute and funny, and it does everything that we were hoping it would do. So that was really our first foray into it. Our second big, what we'll call our second big project is very massive, and you'll note the themes here. It's in partnership with a company called Skybound. So Skybound creates, I'm sure you know them, The Walking Dead. So, Walking Dead is one of the biggest shows on Earth. And both of the founders are huge K-movie fans, actually, and love, and are Asiaphiles, let's say. Robert Kirkman, who's the writer and creator of The Walking Dead, has had this treatment for a long time that he has wanted to see manifest on a global scale, and they have always kind of dabbled with it being a K-drama. So it was a unique coming together of Viki and Skybound to produce this. We are right now, we've solidified our broadcast partner in Korea and are in the process of setting up and finding writers and moving into that the next phase of production. But in the time that we've announced that, so let me give you a little context around this because I think it's really interesting. It's basically that there's a meteor coming to Earth, and there's no way to stop it. There's no superhero Arnold Schwarzenegger who's going to go out and explode this thing. It's going to happen, and so people have 5 years to live. And the 5-year theme is really about sort of the 5 stages of grief or death and dying, right? Which is, denial and then anger and, go on from there. So each season is intended to revolve around one of those. But the overall intent of the series really was also to do it across the world so that you see the perspective from Korea and you see the perspective from Peru and you see the perspective from Spain, all revolving around this same event, but each done with their own storyline and their own sensibility truly within that culture's way of representing drama.
All predicted by David Bowie, of course.
What?
This was all predicted by David Bowie,
I know. I love David Bowie. So we made this announcement, and subsequent to that, you're going to hear a couple of other announcements because other countries have stepped up and partners have stepped up to do this. So we do expect it to be fairly global. But the similarity between those two are really we believe that Drama World was meant to bring in new audiences to the K-drama category. And we think the same thing will happen with this series, which if you're from Peru and you're watching the Peruvian version, you may be more interested in checking out the Korean version, and you may then fall in love with Korean dramas, right? And vice versa. So it's really about this idea of converting people globally. So you'll see more along those lines. We're also doing a lot of experimentation. So we had a partnership, or have a partnership with IHQ, gentleman who just spoke here earlier. Actually, I've never met him, but we have a partnership with his company. And we produced 5 web dramas this year with them, each one a very different tone. So we're doing a lot of dabbling and seeing what resonates with our audience, and then we'll take that and use that to iterate. But definitely exciting times.
Do you ever use the same technique that Amazon uses to test pilots, to test content? They put a bunch of stuff up, see what their consumers like?
Yeah, I mean, that's effectively what we're doing with the IHQ deal. And we'll hone that more this year in our newer partnerships and with them as well, in terms of taking a step back, getting a little bit more of we'll take a little bit more of a heavy hand into the actual creation. So we, green lighted the themes and let them kind of do the work this year, and we'll do the same, but we'll be looking at it from the tone of how do we bring in more of a Viki tone, and also which types of series work, and then we'll go from there. We will, our community is also really strong, so we do see the social elements. We're very huge fans on Facebook and Snapchat and all these other places, and so we would imagine that the next level out is then to start taking snippets and themes and seeing what resonates with them and actually getting their feedback and input on what they want to be a part, again, of the creative process. So, but we're still very early.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Chris, not so long ago, MCNs were a big buzzword, right? At multi-channel networks on YouTube, every major media group wanted to be part of one, to invest in one, to find a way of being part of this explosion of YouTube eyeballs. But the heat seems to have gone a little bit out of that market, just, for observers.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the case? What's going on there?
I think the heat has left the term MCN because MCN is a bit of a misnomer. So another way to gauge the audience, how many people here know what an MCN is? Raise of hands. Okay, more than I
Well-informed
expected.
audience.
Yeah, impressive. I'm not even sure I know what an MCN is. But so for those who don't, MCN is a multi-channel network, and it was born out of Google's original content program 4 to 5 years ago, where they created a dedicated fund of around $200 million to quote-unquote improve the quality of content on the YouTube ecosystem. So they doled out these funds to a variety, probably around 60 different production companies, to create content for YouTube, and also the ability to roll up and aggregate channels in a multi-channel network. And this allowed for easier accounting, to aggregate channels together, and with the hopes of reserving media inventory across that network of channels. That business model never came to be. And I know that because Big Frame actually has a legacy MCN as well. So it's a misnomer because it really doesn't define the business model of where these companies are today. So if you look at Awesomeness or Big Frame or Maker or Fullscreen, they're all now multi-platform media companies. And they are creating content for different demographics and different audiences, and creating that content for all different platforms, whether it's digital and YouTube and Facebook, or longer form linear content, or selling to the SVOD platforms like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon, or doing theatrical releases, or TVOD, et cetera. So that's been an exciting evolution in the space, and MCN to me just doesn't apply to where the market is.
So it's now about multi-platform, not multi-channel.
Yeah, well, I mean, this also is going to speak to, I think, some of my thoughts on where the industry is going. Yeah, there was a big belief that these companies could aggregate these talent networks together and sell media inventory that would compete with the ability of companies like Google or Facebook. And that never really came to fruition. I think it's increasingly difficult to compete with companies like these platforms that are operating at such scale and can sell media inventory across a wide variety of demographic audiences and target them better than anyone else in the world. But I don't believe that Google and Facebook are the premium content powerhouses like a lot of these emerging companies. And I do think if you're a premium content publisher, that you have a chance to win in this new evolution of media. But overall, I would say that, yeah, entertainment, I'm a bit bearish on near-term trends, and I think it is going to go through a reckoning because the dynamics are challenging at the moment. But the winners are going to be the platforms that I just described, as well as the premium talent and as well as the premium content creators.
One of the dramatic changes we've seen in this space recently has been the very fast growth of Snapchat as a video platform. Interestingly, it describes itself as a camera company. That's the pitch as they move towards IPO. Any observations on Snapchat and whether your talent is using that as a platform?
Yeah, Snapchat is very much part of the media mix for our creators. And that speaks to one of the challenges for us as advisors. Think of all the platforms that are out there today. I mean, you can list the obvious ones like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, and probably a handful of others. And so creators will say, do I need to be on all these platforms? Do I use the same type of content for all? How does that work? What is my programming mix? And that's the challenge, right? I think it's very easily to get lost and dilute your brand by trying to be everywhere. I think you really have to understand who is your demographic, who's your target audience, how can you use those individual platforms to best reach new audiences, further engage your existing audience, and speak to them in a different way. And so for some, Snapchat might not make sense, and for others, Facebook might not make sense. But Snapchat for Gen Z, it's ephemeral messaging. I think it really speaks to a lot of the cultural trends that we're seeing in that 12 to 22-year-old demographic. And the growth of that, the growth of the content and the usage by its audience is absolutely incredible. And we're seeing a lot more demand from our advertisers and our buyer partners that want to engage with our creators on Snapchat. So that's a very exciting platform for us.
Joanne, do you push your content out on these other platforms too?
Yeah, they're really important to us. We push out certain kinds of content to them, so we use them both promotionally, so to promote our long-form content, behind the paywall or in front of the paywall, but we also use them just as basically independent content ecosystems to further engage our fans. So the types of content that we use for that are certainly creator content. And I think it's ideal for those environments. It's viral. It's short, snackable content. So we use creator content, and then we will also test. We will test series. So, for example, some of the IHQ content we would put out initially through Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. So yeah.
Chris, are you moving to bring any Asian talent onto your books? And
I would love to. I was actually just talking with Joanne about what is Big Frame's interest in the Asian market and why am I here. I'm trying to figure that out. My business, like I said in the beginning of this panel, is very nascent. We've been around for barely 5 years. And so we're watching our business models continue to evolve. We're still chasing what I consider to be small checks that are growing in volume and growing in size over time. But I want to start understanding, the media market is becoming more global. And we would be remiss were we to not start investing outside of our borders to understand what are the content trends and how can our creators start to collaborate with different talent partners and different producers. So I am excited one day to partner with Asia-based talent. I think what my mandate to the team is first is to start license our content to some of these Asia-based content platforms. There's a lot of agencies that are reaching out to us, and to just collaborate with talent. I mean, you just get creators in a room and magic can happen. And I think that type of initial focus for now will start to dictate where we can go. But yeah, I really don't know. I was telling Joanne that 2 years ago I went to Brazil to evaluate if it made sense for us to expand our operations there, and there was a lot of demand from talent for our services, and there's a growing creator ecosystem, but the CPMs and the ad rates were extremely low, less than probably 25 cents. And that's tough for us to have a viable business there. So I am here to meet different partners and to learn and to be opportunistic, but yeah, I'm not sure where this is going to go.
Joanne, what would be your advice to Chris?
I gave him some advice earlier. I don't know if it's appropriate to tell in the larger group, but I think that
it's good for the panel.
It's good for the panel. I think that there are probably ways that they could partner. I certainly think that the MCN business is happening in Asia, meaning there are companies like CJDia that are gathering and aggregating talent and kind of replicating, to some degree, the awesomeness model. And I think that for us at least, partnerships are always the first step in to see how they're doing it, what they're doing, and to find out what their secret sauce is to actually monetize it in their markets.
There are some other Asian SVOD platforms out there, iFlix and Hook, for example. How do you differentiate from those guys?
Well, actually, we aren't aggressively going after Asia with our SVOD service. And the reason for that is that we tend to buy the content rights outside of the home territory. And also for the exact same issues that you have and really everyone else, which is that outside of a couple of markets, China being one that needs to be handled very specifically based on quotas and all of the different rules and regulations, that there aren't that many markets that are truly that are going to get you the same value that you could get in the U.S. or Europe, et cetera. So it is a really big challenge, and I think that it has yet to be figured out. I know that there are players like iFlix and Hook and many others starting. I think that they are struggling, even though they are getting investment, et cetera, to figure out what that model is from a subscription level. I think there's a ton of piracy, which was addressed in your first panel, and that does need to be addressed as a way to kind of help. But for us, it's not a massive market. Where we see Asia is actually a later stage game for us, and that's where bringing in more of Viki creators, so short form content into that space, and then Viki originals, and kind of seeing where it goes. We don't really know how to monetize it yet. I mean, we're with you.
All right.
We have a big flashing message on the screen saying time's up, even though we could talk for a lot longer, but I think it's been a fun conversation. Please join me in thanking Chris and Joanne.